Ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, it gives me a great pleasure on behalf of the board of the director of BIBA and members of BIBA to welcome you to the special event organized in honor of His Excellency Hesham Zaazou, Minister of Tourism. Minister Zaazou has addressed BIBA on a number of occasions and has been a great supporter of BIBA. Today, Minister Zaazou will give a PowerPoint presentation. Then we will open discussion from the floor. Without further ado, please join me to welcome Minister Hesham Zaazou.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a great pleasure once again to be here with you among many dear friends and colleagues from all disciplines of this Egyptian economy. So it's a great pleasure to be here. A special thank you for Ambassador John Casson. I think you're the groom these days of the tourism industry. I'll put it this way. Awaiting some, I hope, crossing fingers, some good news from the UK, hopefully, in the coming few days to come. And I'll pick up on your words before few weeks, maybe a little bit more. When you said we were the first to stop flying into Sharm, and hopefully we'll be the first to resume. So, for this kind of a very positive comment from your end, John, I look forward that the British government, the UK government, would have listened quite well to your thoughts and your comments. And maybe I'm not saying a lot of secrets, but we were working very hard, I'm saying to everybody in this room today, together with the UK government in the past few weeks and months. Personally, I was involved a lot. John can be a witness for that. Trying to meet the expectations of the experts in the field of airport security. We took a lot of strides, I believe, and now is the time to bear the fruit of these efforts, joint efforts, between the British side and the Egyptian side in that respect. So I look forward for this, as it is not a secret to say that we in the travel business or in Egypt, the tourism business in Egypt, suffered a lot during the past period. Allow me, that's an important phone call. Well, I'm not saying a secret. This call pertains also to this gathering because it has to do with, maybe you've heard about control risks. They're coming soon to start their activities in Egypt with Sharm and Marsa Alam and Cairo Airport. So hopefully this is also part of the activities and efforts we're trying to do. Okay. Without taking much of your time, I prepared a very quick, I would say short, relatively short presentation about the situation as we see it these days. So to start with, I'm going to delve directly into the UK market performance. If you look to the figures from 2010, we definitely have a lot to do in the coming period to try and achieve the levels that we have reached the year before the Egyptian revolution, where we reached almost 1.5 million British tourists coming over to Egypt. Then after the revolution, unfortunately, the figures dwindled a bit, and even more, of course, for obvious reasons, in 2015, where we ended the year with approximately 870,000 British tourists. Of course, the rate of the movement was relatively okay until the unfortunate incident of the Metrojet crash, where the business stopped later on, and accordingly the figures we ended the year with from Britain was one of the worst years since 2010. Now, I look into the preferences. I just remind you that while we have British tourists coming all over Egypt, and particularly to Cairo, Luxor, Aswan, and to southern Sinai and Hurghada. But I think 75% almost of the traffic that comes to Egypt goes to Sharm el-Sheikh in particular. And accordingly, we feel the stress ever since the decision not to fly into Sharm el-Sheikh. The rest of the travelers, 20% go to Hurghada and the area in the vicinity, and then few come to Cairo. I look forward that this will change in the coming months and years. And similar to it is people coming to take a Nile cruise, where we have only one flight a week so far from London Heathrow, using Egypt Air for people who are interested to come for a Nile cruise. Where do we stand today? Well, if I compare, we are less overall for the Egyptian tourism performance than the year before, which in itself was not a good year. We're less by 5.6%, which is due to these incidents of the Metrojet crash, which affected the last 2 months of the year. But when I'm saying that, I compared the year before, maybe it's not a major decrease, but in itself, the 2 months we had almost were 80% decrease in the numbers of people coming over, particularly in southern Sinai, because of the two main markets for Egypt, the British market and the Russian market. Of course, the number of nights has been even affected more. People are coming and they stay less in that sense. In terms of revenues, the same thing. We had also a 15% less in terms of revenues. What did we do? Is we had to be more pragmatic. We had to look into the situation and address it. And whilst saying so, we decided that, as they say, perception is reality, and the reality is around the world that the situation in Egypt is not as safe in the minds of many of the tourists to be. And accordingly, we had to address that, and I'll come in a minute to explain more about it. So we started by having a local campaign called #ThisIsEgypt, and the reason behind it is we asked a lot of Egyptians, and particularly the youth, is to take some pictures using the mobile of nice areas in Egypt, maybe even nice gatherings, and send it over the internet and social media. Instead of saying we're fine, we're safe, it's good to come over to Egypt, sending positive images from Egypt can do the work better. As they say, one picture is worth 1,000 words. And accordingly, we decided to work on this. Of course, I will not delve into the details of this campaign and the results, but all what I can tell you, it had a lot of discussions here in Egypt, and a lot told me that some of the Egyptians even put on some negative pictures, not positive ones, about Egypt over the internet. And in that case, I tell you, we were monitoring it, and that was only 4% of the positive images and the positive quotes that were put on the net in the past period. So the campaign had done some good activity in that sense, and we're moving and enlarging the scope in the coming period. I'll come to that in a point. So we invited the Egyptian youth to do. This is a film of this request by the Egyptians to the Egyptians to put some nice images in the picture. I need somebody to help me to put the film. It's a small video, and by the way, for a lot of people, and I see some of the colleagues from the media, the Egyptian media, like Mustafa Naggar is here, that cost us zero, nothing. We paid nothing for that. That was done by personal efforts and some volunteer work, and even you will notice in the coming period, this campaign will be on outdoor banners, and again, zero cost on the Egyptian government side from the Ministry of Tourism. side. All this has done on voluntary basis, and we were saying, this is the video. Is the voice on? لا استنى بقى. في هيعمل حاجة. Okay. I don't know, the sound is okay. Basically, it's a very simple, thank you, very simple video that says to the Egyptians, there is so many stories, so many lovely places that you can take a picture of and send over the social media to the whole world and tell them how beautiful our country is. So we did that on a local basis. Then we took it over to the Middle East Arab markets, and now we're trying even to enlarge the scope of this market to Egypt, and it has witnessed an increase. Maybe some of our friends running the hotels here in Cairo can say they had relatively a good end of the year in 2015 and recently with the Middle Eastern Arab holidays in that sense. The figures that we have monitored in between November and December of 2015 compared to the year before, we had a 20% increase in the number of visitors from the Gulf Arab market. Now we're trying to enlarge the scope of this activity by giving additional facilities for the other side of the Arab world, and the Morocco, Algeria, and Tunisia to come over to Egypt. And I think the coming period will witness an influx, better numbers in that respect coming over to Egypt when it comes to our activity in that respect. Okay, what are the challenges that we are facing? Basically, I can sum it in a handful of challenges. Number one, as I mentioned, is the negative perception. And I just mentioned perception is reality. This is a reality on ground. We need to work on it. And I always tell to my colleagues and even to the Egyptians that I meet, we have to stop saying, come over to Egypt, Egypt is safe. This is not proper, not correct. Once you say that, you entice, you trigger actually the opposite. Why is he saying that? It's exactly, if you want to go to Geneva, for instance, say, and the Swiss would tell you, come over to Geneva. Geneva is safe. Doesn't sound right. So it's better to send proper images. It is better to have mega events, be it sports events in Egypt, be it artistic events in Egypt, be it whatever events that we can make, and we have a schedule of that we will announce and we will pull through and try to promote in the coming period, as well as work on the other elements in that respect. And currently we have a company called Burson Mastellers. We're working on a crisis management basis, trying to attend to all the news that sometimes comes over, and we need to respond. So far, we're doing better. The response is relatively better. People that are following the news. To give you an example, we had that problem in Hurghada a few weeks ago, that criminal attempt, and unfortunately we did respond to it, but 4 hours later. That 4 hours, the media was viral all over, and so many stories came out, all negative. People said those perpetrators were wearing black turbans and with black flags of ISIS coming from the seaside. They had a belt of explosives, all kinds of, unfortunately, groundless stories in that respect. Those guys were found doped, and it was a criminal act. But as I got to learn myself, if I don't respond in the first hour of any problem and you get the right story out, defending it later becomes a very difficult exercise. And yes, I went down to Hurghada, and yes, I tried my best in that, and that changed a little bit the situation. We're over it. But there was another number of incidents, unfortunately, that took place. Now we're trying to better that in that respect. Today, we had a piece of news. I think it's going to come out of the Minister of Aviation's office, because yet again, in spite of all the good activities we did with the UK government when it comes to airport security, we are not going to stop there. And I had to communicate this information to the world, and of course to everybody who is interested to do business with Egypt. We will not stop at control risks activity with the airports. We will continue to do all these activities throughout the airports of Egypt. We are the moment I'm telling you that in that closed room, but it is not yet officially declared, but it will be declared very soon. We are forming a special private company in Egypt to run all the needed activities within the airports, getting the necessary training from a company like Control Risks and from other bodies, including our friends in the Ministry of Transport and the related or the relative departments in the UK and other European countries, to ensure that we have the proper team situated all over Egypt and most of its airports. Not having said that, we will not stop there as well. We will continue in light of the additional threat that we are witnessing, not here in Egypt, the world is facing. That threat that has been elevated ever since that issue of the Metrojet crash or incident necessitates a country like Egypt, as well as others around the world, to work diligently on upgrading all the security measures that it takes for us in Egypt, for the Egyptians, as well as for very welcomed guests into the country and passing in and out of the airports, getting into our touristic sites and cities. So that exercise will continue. I have pledged, as I mentioned before, 250 million Egyptian pounds in addition to existing budget, and will increase more of this money in that respect, because if we don't have that level of safety and security, or at least, I'll put it this way to you, ladies and gentlemen, this evening, if we do not do our homework as good as the best around the world, then we cannot claim that we can have a good prospects when it comes to promoting our country and tourism into this country, into Egypt. So the issue of safety and security is of the essence. It is a prime file in the government, and I'm personally involved in it, and will continue to work very hard in that respect. And we will not stop there, even which I hope, if we have some good news soon of the resumption of the flights, I assure you, Ambassador John Casson, and all our friends that is interested in the welfare of their citizens coming over to Egypt, that this exercise will continue diligently, and I assure you this is on top of the agenda of this government. The other issue that faces as a challenge is the airlift. What had happened, unfortunately, following the banning of flights into Sharm, a negative overcast shadow over the whole destination. Even to those internal other sub-destinations within Egypt that was not in that vicinity of stopping flights into it, like for instance Hurghada or Marsa Alam, the numbers so far reflect a slow in demand. And of course the root cause is what I just mentioned, but what had happened in reaction to that was a lot of the tour operators either decreased capacities or stopped the operation altogether for a period of time. Out of the UK, for instance, Monarch Airlines, a scheduled low-cost airline, stopped its operation because of what had happened. British Airways, the same thing. I had discussions recently with them, but they already declared they're going to open their books for new reservations next fall. And that's quite a long period from now. Same thing goes for EasyJet. Same thing goes for other German carriers that actually either stop their operation or decrease their capacities in that sense. And having said that, that is a major challenge that we do not speak a lot about it, except within the tourism circles. So what should we be doing in the coming period is, as soon as we have some good news, I think we should act very fastly. We need to give incentives, yet again, to all our partners abroad, be it incentives to tour operators or to airlines, one way or another, to entice them, to help them take a decision to either come back as quickly or as fast as they can in that respect. The third challenge, in my opinion, is the staff that we have lost when all these problems happened. And actually, it happened on a pace ever since the revolution in 2011. A lot of people that were trained staff in the industry, unfortunately, left to other sectors of the economy. Recently, I know some of the hotels already laid a lot of personnel in that respect. I understand it. I don't blame them, although I'm indifferent a bit on this issue, but I understand any reason. Some of them gave long vacations, some of them gave lesser salaries, some of them, but all it has to do with the issue of the human factor and the human element in the industry. And I believe together with the private sector in the coming period, we need to sit down together and see what is to be needed to be done to ensure that we have well-trained personnel. We continue the training programs to ensure that the level of services, once we get the business back, and by the way, ladies and gentlemen, I have no doubt whatsoever that the business will come back. I have no doubt whatsoever that it will come back sooner than a lot of people would expect. People want to come to Egypt. They just want to have the right message and get the right and necessary level of comfort for them to take a decision to come back. And we're getting ready. I'm going to shed more light on this issue. But the issue and the cornerstone of our industry is the human factor. And I think this is the third and very important challenge that we face. Finally, we need, as a government, to engage with the industry. We need to listen to them at this juncture about the road ahead, how to move with all the challenges that we are facing. And in that respect, I got yet again an approval from the Prime Minister to start effecting the Committee for Tourism. It's similar to the Committee for Economics, مجموعة الاقتصادية، مجموعة سياحية هتكون. Because that is different from the Supreme Council for Tourism. The Supreme Council of Tourism, which I already addressed His Excellency the President to get it reactivated again. Probably, as you may well know, particularly all those gathered this evening in this room and works in the field, in the industry, knows that that kind of a forum, that kind of a platform is a strategic one. We will talk about strategic issues when it comes to the level of the President and the Supreme Council of Tourism. But we have ongoing challenges and ongoing needs that cuts across the board of all the ministries and departments within the government. And I believe that's a tactical versus a strategic approach when it comes to strategic decisions in the sector. And hence, I believe a tactical moving forward, hopefully in the coming few months with some good news, we need to get together on the same boat, the government, the private sector, sit with the Prime Minister, sit with the relevant ministers and see what are the different kinds of challenges and problems that we're facing. I know Nagi Aryan here is in front of me and he's laughing because the day before yesterday he was screaming because of bureaucracy, because of not getting the necessary permits for him to run some of the very few demand received for the cruises behind the high dam. And I understand, I did my best, it is now running, we're trying to, but it comes back and again, this kind of problems, not only in the Nile cruise area, but across the board. So I believe activating this committee will yield better results in the coming period. The Prime Minister is happy to sit with us all, and this will take place very soon, I promise. Of course, we need to move forward in combating the negative perception based on media impact. This is a reality, as I mentioned before, even here in Beba. I remind you that the negative impressions resulting from Mr. Cameron's decision not to fly into Egypt spiked after the 4th of November, because it spiked immediately after the crash of the Metrojet, then it went down, as you can see from this graph, and went back again acutely after that. Keywords and statements on the in various platforms of the media was quite negative. Before Mr. Cameron's decision and announcement in London on the 4th of November, there was no mention about the issue of bomb. I'm not speaking again, and let me tell you that the investigation taking place at the moment that is not yet over does not rule out any option, including this one. But they didn't arrive as yet to a final conclusion. However, coming up with these words, bomb, explosion, downing of the, was keywords that was quite negative, and it affected us tremendously. This graph, as I mentioned before, some of you have seen it before, it looks to the keywords used after 4th of November that gave that negative perception about the destination, because that was addressed to the public, to the tourists to be. So if he has a decision to come to Egypt, I'm sure reading all these keywords would discourage him from taking that kind of a decision. Same thing on the social media. However, we had to be pragmatic, and we established already in the Ministry of Tourism a central communication unit. We're not talking internally, we're talking externally. It only started a couple of weeks ago, right after Christmas holidays, and I'm sure it's going to bear some good fruit in the coming period of time. Now, one of the main actions in discussing it with with the experts is one thing that we did is to work very closely with the security delegations that came to Egypt, and we did that. I'm sure Ambassador Kassan can vouch that we did our best in that regard, in full cooperation, because the aim was and the objective was the same. If our partners in Europe, and particularly in the UK, are hesitant because of a feeling that it is not safe, we want to make them safe, and accordingly entice them to take a different decision in that respect, and that's what we did in the past period. And I think they are more happier now than they did back in November of 2015. Also, harmonizing the efforts when it comes to messaging. Already this unit is in charge of getting in touch with the various important lead ministries in charge at the states, like Interior and Aviation. Once we have an incident, we get the message immediately, get the facts, and then translate it with the language that the people out there, particularly in the West, would understand quite well. And we try our best to ensure that we have the facts out there, because nothing hides at the end of the day.